Welcome back, everyone, to the second lecture in conic sections. This one we're going to talk about ellipses. Basically, an ellipse is an oval. You can read the formal definition here. You can see the picture. But the best way to think about an ellipse is if you were to take two nails and put them in a board and have a big piece of string tied together, and then take a pencil and run around that board. Think about the shape that it would create. It would create an ellipse. Well, here's the equation for an ellipse. X squared over a squared plus y squared over b squared equals 1. Some important things. Both the x and the y are squared. There are numbers on the bottom, even if that number is equal to 1 or some other number. And this is the important part. It must be equal to 1 on this side. If it's not equal to 1 on that side, we need to make it equal to 1. Graphing these are actually pretty easy. Remember that the number on the bottom of these is squared, so I'm going to take the square root of both of those numbers. That's going to tell me how far on the x to go and how far on the y to go. For all of these notes today, our ellipse will be centered at the origin, 0, 0. So here's some information. You can read it. The equation is always x squared over a squared plus y squared over b squared equals 1. We'll talk about the vertices in a second, but the big thing to remember, the vertices come from the major axis. That's the longer axis. The minor axis is the shorter one. But here's the important part. The foci is the one thing you're going to have to memorize. If the ellipse is longer than it is tall, then it's going to be the foci, comma, 0. And if it's taller than it is wide or long, it's 0, comma, the foci. And the foci we get by doing the bigger bottom minus the smaller bottom and then taking the square root of it. Well, let's talk about how to graph these things because it's easier to see when we actually have an example. Take a problem like this. Well, this is nothing close to what that formula just looked like. I said it needed to be equal to 1. So how can I make it equal to 1? Well, I can divide this side by 144. I can do that as long as I divide this side by 144. If you do that, you get x squared over 9 plus y squared over 16. So, some things to think about here. Because these numbers are squared to begin with, this is going to tell you that the x-axis is going to go out plus or minus 3. So, I'm going to go 3 on either side. And the y-axis is going to be plus or minus 4. So, I'm going to start at the middle. I'm going to go negative 3, positive 3. Negative 4, positive 4. Then I'm going to draw my ellipse. So, the x-axis is 9, so the square root of 9 is plus or minus 3. So I'm going to put a dot in negative 3 and positive 3. The y is over 16. The square root of 16 is plus or minus 4. So I'm going to go up to positive 4, and I'm going to go down to negative 4. I'm going to draw my circle. Perfect. Okay. I said circle, I'm wrong. That's not a circle, it's an ellipse. What is the major axis? Well, this one's the major axis. It's the longer side. Major axis is 4 and 4, so it's 8. The minor axis is 3 and 3, so it's 6. Pretty easy so far, right? So the only thing we haven't talked about is the foci. Remember, the foci, because this one is taller than it is wide, it's going to be 0, comma, plus or minus c. And the formula was c squared equals, I'm just going to call it the big one squared minus the small one squared. Which of those two numbers is bigger? Well, 16. I don't have to square it because it's already squared in the formula. Minus the smaller one is 9. So 16 minus 9 would be 7. So the foci is going to be at plus or minus the square root of 7. But remember, I have to make sure I use the right formula. So the foci are really 0 plus or minus the square root of 7. So they're going to be, square root of 7 is a little bit more than 2 and less than 3, so somewhere in there and somewhere in there. Major axis, minor axis, foci. There's proof of that. So, for an ellipse, remember, just look at the x squared and the y squared, make sure they're both positive, there's a plus sign between them. Look at the bottoms, take the square roots, that'll tell you the x and the y, how far to go on each axis. And make sure it's always equal to 1, it must be equal to 1. Remember the formula for focus, and check out the notes, we'll talk about eccentricity, and you can see the formula for that.